Let's now quickly revise Accounting Standard 20, which is Chapter 4, Unit 5 of your syllabus. The objective of this accounting standard is to determine earnings per share. We know the profit of the entire entity. We want to know how much of this profit belongs to each shareholder. The process of determining and presentation of profit to each shareholder, specifically equity shareholder, is earnings per share. There are two kinds of EPS that we talk about in this standard. One, basic EPS. Two, diluted EPS. Basic EPS is applicable for all companies and everyone should do. This diluted EPS, it's only for large entities. Big companies should do. Non-MSMEs and large entities. Small and medium companies or small entities, SMCs, need not do dilutive EPS. We'll come to dilutive EPS also later. Now let's start with definition. We compute EPS only for equity share because for preference share the percentage of dividend is fixed. For earnings per share computation, equity share definition goes like this. A share which does not have preferential rights, a share which is not a preference share is equity share. But what is a preferential? Share which carries preferential rights, meaning it has preference over the equity shareholder for payment of dividend. It has preference over the equity shareholder for repayment of capital. That makes a preference shareholder preferential. And that makes the equity shareholder an equity shareholder. For a preference shareholder, dividend rate is fixed. For an equity shareholder, dividend rate is not fixed. Having spoken about dividend, let me make it clear for all of you. Dividend per share and earnings per share are not same. And in this standard, we are not computing dividend per share. Profit earned by the company divided by number of shares is earnings per share. Profit of the company distributed to shareholders in cash is dividend. So remember, earnings will be more, dividend will be less. Dividend is part of the earnings which is distributed in cash. Dividend is part of the earnings which is distributed in cash. Some reserves might not be eligible for distribution as dividend, but they're still considered to be part of the numerator in computation of EPS. So when you start computing EPS, we'll take the profit available to equity shareholders in the numerator and divide it by number of shares. This profit available to equity shareholders, what you're taking here in the numerator, no, that is earnings before interest and tax, less interest, less tax, no problem, less preference dividend. That's it. Don't deduct transfer to reserves. Though the reserve is not available for distribution as dividend, it is still profit available. It is profit attributable to equity shareholder only. Let's say profit after tax and after preference dividend is 1 lakh and they tell preference dividend 5,000. Should you deduct? Yes. What if they give 10,000 to be transferred to general reserve? Don't deduct. Don't deduct. Take that before deduction of reserves and then divide it by number of shares. The trick is very less with regard to numerator. Major discussion runs around denominator. So in the denominator, we have weighted average number of equity shares. What's there in denominator? Weighted average number of equity shares. So do we take weighted average number of equity shares? If the shares are fully paid up, take them as 100% paid up. But if the shares are partly paid up, don't take the percentage paid up. Ask yourself one question. Are these partly paid up shares eligible for dividend? The question will mention if partly paid up shares are eligible for dividend, then whatever part paid up, 60% paid up, 70% paid up, 80% paid up, include them in the denominator to that extent paid up. 10,000 shares are 80% paid up. Take 10,000 into 80%, 8,000 in denominator. These 10,000 shares are 80% paid up, but these 80% paid up shares are not eligible for dividend as per share certificate, as per TRHP, as per the filing in prospectus made by the company. Then what? Then, though these 10,000 shares are 80% paid up, don't take them in the denominator. Consider them zero. From when will you consider? Whenever they become 100% paid up. So what do you do for partly paid up shares? You should check, are they eligible for dividend? If they are eligible for dividend, they are considered in denominator to the extent paid up, percentage paid up. If they are not eligible for dividend, don't consider them in denominator. Ignore. I hope you understood. If the partly paid up shares are issued later, let's say 8 months over, 8 months over, then you issued one share 20% paid up. Then what to do? Take it 20% for the remaining 4 months only. 10,000 shares into 20% into 4 by 12. What if the shares were 20% paid up in the beginning, 50% paid up in the middle, 100% paid up at the end? For that much period, that percentage multiplied by that period. You should take percentage paid up multiplied by period outstanding. Both have to be considered. I hope you all understood. Though the shares are partly paid up, EPS will be only one. If there are 10,000 shares of rupees 10 each fully paid up, 10,000 shares of rupees 10 each, 8 rupees paid up. Two shares are there. One is fully paid up, other one is partly paid up. EPS will be 1 because fully paid up shares are 10, partly paid up shares are 10 rupees but 8 paid up. Both are same class, one EPS. However, what if the shares are of different nominal value? 10,000 shares of rupees 10 each fully paid up. 10,000 shares of rupees 5 each fully paid up. Then there are two different classes of shares. We'll have how many EPS? 2 EPS. We'll have how many EPS? 2 EPS. When you have 2 EPS, what will you do? You will equate the number of shares. 10,000 shares of rupees 10 each. Okay. 5,000 shares of 10,000 shares of rupees 5 each are there. No. I will consider them to be 5,000 shares of 10 each. Then take one common denominator. Then arrive at EPS. That is for 10 rupees shares. Then, if it was 5 rupees shares, it will be half of it. Compute one more EPS. We'll have 2 EPS. Instead of converting 5 rupees shares to 10, you can convert 10 rupees shares to 5. Take the 10 denominator, find EPS. That resulting EPS is for shares of rupees 5 nominal value. Double it and you'll find the EPS for shares of 10. Hope you understood. So when there are two different nominal value shares available, we'll have two different EPS. When you have only one variety of nominal value shares, we'll have only one EPS, even if the shares are partly paid. What if the company does bonus issue, share split or consolidation? Whenever there is bonus issue of shares done, remember from the company's point of view, the capital or the total equity is not increasing. Reserves are capitalized. Whatever you do bonus issue doesn't matter. Even if the bonus issue is done on 1st of March or 30th of March, compute the period from the beginning of the year. So bonus issue number of shares will be considered from the earliest reporting date, irrespective of the date of bonus issue. Basically, period will be 12 by 12. Same applies to share split and consolidation. What is share split? Company will take 110 rupees shares from you and then give you two shares of 5 rupees each. Share split. What is consolidation? Company will take two shares of rupees 10 each from you, give you one share of 20 rupees. Consolidation. Company might do this at times. It is treated like bonus issue when we do EPS. Take it from the earliest date possible. But you don't have any questions on share split and consolidation in your exam anyway. You only have questions on bonus issue. Now let's talk about right issue. Whenever company issues right shares, it is not free. It is not free. It is shares issued for cash consideration, but the cash collected is lesser than the market price. Three important prices to be noted. Cumulative right price, right issue price, theoretical X right price. What is cumulative right price? Price before right issue. What is right issue price? Price for right issue. What is theoretical X right price? Price after right issue. Usually they will not give theoretical X right price. You should find theoretical X right price. How do you find cumulative right price? Multiplied by number of shares there before right issue. Cumulative right price multiplied by number of shares which are there before right issue plus number of right shares multiplied by right issue price. Cumulative right price multiplied by shares before right issue price multiplied by number of right shares divided by number of shares before right issue plus right shares. If you do this, you will get theoretical X right price. You will get theoretical X right price. Keep this cumulative right price out of discussion. Compare this theoretical X right price with right issue price. Obviously, theoretical X right price will be more, right issue price will be less. So the company is charging lesser than the market price to the shareholders. So there is hidden bonus element or non-cash element. How do we find it? Very simple. Take right issue price multiplied by number of right shares. Take right issue price multiplied by number of right shares. You will get value. That value is there, no? Divide it by what? Divide it by theoretical X right price. You will get some shares, no? those shares are issued for cash. I'll repeat, you'll take right issue price multiplied by number of right shares. Whatever you get is the total value paid by the shareholders to the company. Divide it by theoretical X right price. Whatever value you get, those many shares are given for cash consideration. Out of the total right shares, these many shares are given for cash consideration. Balance shares are three. Free shares are to be treated like bonus, meaning it should be taken irrespective of the date of issue from the earliest reporting date possible. However, these shares which are given for cash, they will be taken from the date of right exercise. Cash element from the date of exercising, bonus element from the beginning, earliest reporting date possible. Common point for bonus issue and right issue is after you redo the EPS for the current year, what you would have to do is those bonus shares have to be included in the denominator of the previous year's EPS computation also, and we need to recompute the previous year's EPS. Such EPS of previous year computed considering the bonus or right shares in the denominator will be considered as restated EPS. This restated EPS is for comparison with current year EPS. This restated EPS is for the comparison with current year EPS. I hope you all understood that. Then, in the process of amalgamation, if the shares are issued, you learn it in AS 14. There are no questions on this for you to know. You should check whether the amalgamation is in the nature of merger or purchase. How? That's in AS 14. If it is purchase, then shares will be considered in EPS from the date of issue, date of acquisition. If it is merger, it is like shares issued for non-cash consideration. Shares issued as bonus, that kind of computation. Irrespective of the date, we'll compute it from the beginning of the year. You have no practical questions on this, and you don't know amalgamation when you're reading this at this point. So just giving you a small reference. If in case there is convertible preference shares or convertible debentures or ESOP, they are not considered in basic EPS. They are not considered in if that convertible preference shares becomes equity shares. From the date it becomes equity shares, we'll consider. If convertible debentures become equity shares, the day it becomes equity shares, from that day I will consider it in denominator. Till that day I don't. And same with employee stock options. If there is any employee stock options outstanding, those are options outstanding. Those are not shares. They will be considered in the denominator the day the shares are issued. The day the shares are. This is the first part of the standard. Then the second part of the standard is actually talking about dilutive EPS. What does it talk about? Dilutive EPS. What does dilutive EPS say? It is the worst possible EPS. Worst possible. In the worst come scenario, how much will be our EPS? This will be computed considering those dilutive earnings and potential shares. So from the profit that we have right now, we will add back that expenses what we've deducted or that appropriation what we've deducted by way of payment of debenture interest, by way of payment of preference dividend. Sir, why do we add back? Because we paid debenture interest or we paid preference dividend because they are preference shareholders, debenture holders. They are not equity shares. They're saying that they want to become equity shares. They want to sit in denominator. So those debentures or equity share, those debentures or preference shares, they are not equity shares. They are potential equity shares. Those debentures are convertible debentures. Those preference shares are convertible preference shares. If you convert those debentures to equity shares, if you convert those preference shares to equity shares, they'll come in denominator. You have not yet converted. So you will do imaginary EPS. Denominator, you add them to number of shares. Numerator, you will add back whatever you had paid them as interest and dividend because now you don't have to pay them. So the numerator for dilutive EPS computation will be you will add back the preference dividend paid to preference shareholders. You will add back the debenture interest or loan interest that you paid. But when you add preference dividend to numerator, no problem. When you add interest, from that interest deduct tax and then add. Denominator, you add whatever equity shares are supposed to be given to them. There is one more potential equity share called ESOP. For that, the numerator doesn't change. No change in the partition. Denominator, you know what to add. When you add to the denominator and then compute the EPS, that EPS what you computed by adding that dilution in earnings and adding the potential shares, it should be lesser than the basic. If basic is here, what you computed comes lesser than basic, then it is dilutive EPS. It's to be disclosed. However, basic EPS is here. Whatever you got after adding that dilution in earnings and potential shares comes somewhere here. It is not dilutive. It is anti-dilutive EPS. Anti-dilutive EPS need not be disclosed. Anti-dilutive EPS need not be. Last point what I want you to notice, there are convertible preference shares, convertible debentures and ESOP. They will be considered in basic EPS. They will be considered in basic EPS once the conversion is done to equity shares. They will be considered in potential equity shares in dilutive EPS before conversion. Last point, if all three of them come together in one balance sheet, two dilutive earnings only change in the numerator divided by change in denominator, or debentures, preference shares and ESOP separately. Check which will have maximum dilution. Rank them in the ascending order. Take one at a time and then compute. You take only ESOP, compute. If it is dilutive, lesser than basic, then add one more and then check. If it is still dilutive, go to third one. At any point, if it becomes anti-dilutive, stop there. This is called stage-wise dilution, on which there is no question in your material, but we've done one AQ. If in case you have learned it before, revise it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, ignore that. Might not be highly important for exam unless examiner decides to screw you. Pray to God that examiner should not decide to screw you and then skip that. And this is with regard to accounting standard 20, which talks about earnings per share.